Our journey began in college, where we spent 2 years together and fell deeply in love. As soon as we graduated, we sealed our commitment with a beautiful fall wedding. In the following 2 years, we explored every aspect of our relationship, building a strong foundation for the future. Finally settled and eager to start a family, my wife stopped taking birth control and her libido surged. However, it took 3 long years until we were blessed with a precious baby girl. But after just a few months, my wife resumed taking birth control and experienced harsh side effects. The doctor tried switching her medications several times, but each one proved to be unsuccessful. We discussed our options and were unsure if we wanted another child. As I knew that getting a vasectomy reversed later on would be easier for me if we changed our minds, I chose to have the operation. It was 3 years ago when my wife and I made the decision for her to stop taking birth control. She had been feeling much better since then, and our sex life had become worry-free now that pregnancy was no longer a concern. In fact, we were having more intimate moments than we did back in our college days. But just 3 weeks ago, everything changed. My wife's period was delayed, which wasn't entirely uncommon for her. However, I noticed that her breasts were tender and she started showing symptoms of morning sickness. The thought of nature reversing vasectomies crossed my mind, so I immediately went to the doctor to have my sperm count checked. The result confirmed that I was still sterile, but I didn't share this news with my wife. Meanwhile, my wife finally went to her doctor, and the pregnancy test came back positive. She urged me to get tested as well, but the stress of the situation made me physically ill, and I couldn't bring myself to go right away. My mind was plagued with twisted, sickening scenarios as I awaited the results of my DNA test. The fear and uncertainty consumed me, until finally, I gathered the courage to take my daughter in for a test as well. Today, both sets of results were delivered to me, and as I read them, a wave of nausea overcame me. The truth was harsh. I am sterile, and my daughter is not biologically mine. My heart felt like it had been ripped from my chest, shattered into a million pieces. The weight of this knowledge crushed me, leaving me struggling to breathe amid the overwhelming pain and betrayal. As soon as my wife entered the door, I could feel the tension in the air. My heart was racing, and my hands were shaking as I handed her the test results. With a look of shock and disbelief, she denied any wrongdoing and insisted that there must have been an error with the test. But when I showed her the results from last week, she broke down in tears. I demanded to know who she had slept with and how many times. Each time she told me the same story, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. I made her tell me 3 times, each time asking if there was anything else she needed to confess. Another lie would mean the end of our marriage. Finally, she revealed that it had only happened once and that they had used a condom, but it must have failed. I felt a physical pain in my chest as I listened to her explain in detail what had happened. How could she do this to our family? Tears streamed down her face as I asked if she wanted a divorce. She begged for my forgiveness and promised to do whatever it took to save our marriage. But I couldn't help but ask if it was worth it. The thought of raising someone else's child tore at my heart. In a last-ditch effort to salvage our relationship, I asked if she would be willing to terminate the pregnancy. The room fell silent as we both contemplated the gravity of such a decision. She cried for the rest of the night, but before we went to bed, she promised me that she would do whatever it took to make things right again. The thought of the DNA test loomed heavy in my mind, a constant reminder of the betrayal and hurt that had been inflicted upon me. I knew I needed to consult a lawyer soon to explore my options for child support for our firstborn. Anger and resentment swelled within me as I remembered how she had kept this secret from me, thinking she could get away with it without confessing anything else. The weight of all the lies and deceit became too much to bear, and I couldn't help but wonder what other truths would never come to light. Update number 1. The moment I stepped into my lawyer's office, the air of professionalism and determination was palpable. My attorney greeted me with a warm smile and motioned for me to take a seat on the plush leather chair in front of her desk. In front of me lay a stack of paperwork, bank statements, and folders containing my medical and DNA results. As I began to tell my story, her assistant sat in with us, taking diligent notes while my lawyer carefully combed through each document. After I finished, she asked insightful questions and outlined my options with precision. Living in an at-fault state was both a blessing and a curse. It gave us leverage, but it also meant a longer and more expensive legal process. But with my lawyer by my side, I felt confident that justice would be served. As we discuss the possibility of a first child, my mind races with scenarios. If my wife agrees to sign the papers, our responsibility for financial support is easily resolved. However, if she does not consent, it may require a court-ordered DNA test and a judgment from the legal system to release me from any obligation. Either outcome could absolve me of paying child support, but one path will undoubtedly be more costly than the other. The weight of this decision bears down on me as I consider the potential outcomes. Despite my wife's successful career and similar income to my own, she didn't think the judge would award her any alimony. However, we both knew that negotiations for dividing property and other important matters could be settled before involving a judge. The only downside was that due to the holiday season, the necessary paperwork couldn't be prepared before Christmas, but it would definitely be completed before the end of the year. My lawyer advised me to keep quiet until I was officially served with the papers. She also provided me with a list of tasks to complete both before and after Christmas in preparation for the legal proceedings. One possibility that was brought up was the fact that my wife and I had been actively trying to have a baby, and there was a chance that she may not have known the child wasn't biologically mine. As such, my wife had an appointment with her OB tomorrow to discuss this potential issue. Update number 2. I met my sister at my house, the place that used to be my home, but now felt unfamiliar and heavy with memories. We began the task of moving my belongings to her house. It was a temporary solution while the divorce proceedings were underway and until I could gain possession of the house once again. It took 4 carloads to transfer all of my possessions to her place, where they would sit in a new environment, surrounded by different furniture and smells. My sister was insistent on being there for support and to serve as a witness to this difficult chapter in my life. With determination, we also relocated the nanny cam from its previous location to the living room, ensuring that every step of this process would be recorded in the cloud, a digital archive of our efforts and emotions during this trying time. The clock read 10:45 a.m. when a disruptive ding echoed through the silent air. A text from my lawyer lit up the screen, informing me that my wife had been served. I quickly tapped out an email, letting her know that I was patiently waiting at our home whenever she was ready to talk. Minutes later, another text from my wife appeared on my phone screen, filled with anger and confusion. "Why?" she demanded, followed by a string of indistinguishable words. With a frustrated sigh, I resent my initial text and waited for her to return home. In the meantime, she bombarded me with texts and voicemails, pleading for us to sit down and discuss before moving forward with divorce proceedings. She played the family card, emphasizing how this would devastate our child and both of our families. And the final blow how betrayed she felt. Each word felt like a sharp stab in my heart, but I knew we needed to have this conversation in person. The GPS app still tracked her movements as she left work, taking a detour to a nearby Walgreens. As she emerged from the store with a small bag in hand, a police car pulled in behind her in the driveway. Confused and anxious, she was quickly approached by two officers who explained that she had called them in a state of fear, claiming there were guns in the house. Calmly but firmly, I showed them my empty gun safe and assured them that any firearms had been transferred to a secure location. Returning inside, I presented my wife with the results of a paternity test, which revealed that her daughter was not biologically mine. Shocked and disbelieving, she broke down in tears for several minutes. It was then that I knew this was the final straw and why I had made the decision to file for divorce. As we sat in silence, the police officers reminded us to remain civil before departing. I informed them that I would be staying at my sister's house for the time being. As I stared at my girlfriend, a knot formed in my stomach. When I asked who the father of her child was, she shrugged and claimed she didn't know. My heart sank as I realized she must have been with multiple men during our relationship. Or maybe she just didn't care enough to remember their names. I couldn't believe it. How many times had she cheated on me between pregnancies? She admitted it was just the two of them, but I couldn't trust her words anymore. Frustration and anger boiled inside me as I reminded her of what I had said earlier. If she didn't tell me the whole truth, I was done, but she still hadn't listened. I stood my ground and told her once again that I couldn't and wouldn't raise someone else's child. She needed to figure out who the real father was, because there was no way I would pay child support for a baby that wasn't mine. She begged me to think about our daughter and what we were going to tell her. But I refused to take any responsibility or clean up her mess. This was her mistake to fix, not mine. Last week, I meticulously drafted 2 emails. One for our friends and family explaining the situation and including copies of all the test results that led to my decision to file for divorce. And another for my wife containing the same information, along with things I had previously shared with her. I consulted my lawyer and made several revisions before receiving their approval. As soon as she pulled into the driveway this afternoon, I sent out copies to everyone we knew. The responses were swift and overwhelmingly one-sided, filled with passionate colors of anger and disappointment. In the end, I couldn't help but think that if only my wife had been honest from the beginning, perhaps we could have worked things out. But the repeated lies and infidelity were too much for me to bear. And when I confronted her about potentially getting her tubes tied instead of me having a vasectomy, it was clear that she had been planning this all along. I told her she needed to get a lawyer so we could begin the painful process of moving forward and healing. Update number 3. Today marked our second meeting with the lawyers, and after many hours of discussing and negotiating, we finally signed off on almost everything. The only holdup was the house, as we were still waiting for an appraisal to determine its value and how it would be divided between us. Legal motions were filed today and a court-ordered paternity test was scheduled for all 3 of us. Despite the tension and animosity that typically accompanies divorce proceedings, my soon-to-be ex-wife surprisingly did not put up a fight. We filed for a no-fault divorce petition, and if everything goes smoothly, I will regain possession of the house on February 15th, with the finalized divorce coming on April 5th. It was a bittersweet victory, but I couldn't help feeling relieved that this tumultuous chapter of my life would soon come to an end. The lawyers did their job well, ensuring that we remained separated and limiting our conversations to a minimum. When she entered the room, her complexion was pale and her energy seemed depleted. I couldn't discern if it was due to lack of sleep or perhaps being over-medicated. She sat silently, gazing out the large windows as the lawyers meticulously read through each document before having us sign them. The atmosphere in the room felt heavy and tense, like a thick fog had settled in. As I walked out of the office, a wave of relief washed over me like a cool breeze on a hot summer day. It was as if a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders and I could finally breathe freely again. HR had arranged for me to go to therapy tomorrow, which gave me hope for healing and moving forward. My boss, understanding the struggles I had been facing, had left a bottle of champagne on my desk with a note of encouragement. He also offered me some time off if needed, but I reassured him that I was eager to get back to work and continue pushing through. As I stepped outside into the fresh air, I felt a newfound sense of determination and optimism for the future ahead. Thank you for joining me through this deeply personal and tumultuous journey. As we close this chapter, I'm left reflecting on the profound impacts of trust and betrayal in relationships. This story, though heavy, is a reminder of the resilience we can muster in the face of heartache and the tough decisions we sometimes must make to honor our own well-being. If this story resonated with you, or if you've experienced something similar, I encourage you to share your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation and support each other through our shared experiences. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more stories like this, where we explore the complexities of life and relationships together. Remember, you're not alone in your struggles, and there's strength in our community here. Until next time, take care and stay strong.